If someone handed you a $1,000 bill today, most people would assume it was fake. Cashiers might refuse it. Banks would stare at it for a moment. Some people wouldn't even know the United States ever printed one. Yet the $1,000 bill was once completely real. It circulated legally, appeared in banks across the country, and even carried the face of a former American president. So what happened to it? Why would a country print extremely high-value currency and then quietly let it disappear? The story of the $1,000 bill isn't really about paper money. It's about how the financial system changed, how technology replaced physical cash, and how governments slowly realized that the bigger the bill, the easier it becomes for crime to move money invisibly. To understand why the $1,000 bill vanished, we have to go back to a time when moving money was much harder than it is today. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, banks didn't have digital transfers, instant wires, or online ledgers. If a financial institution needed to move large sums of money from one place to another, they often had to move the physical currency itself. That meant bundles of cash traveling between banks. This is where large denomination bills became useful. Instead of shipping suitcases filled with hundreds of small bills, banks could use high-value notes. The United States printed several of these large denominations, including the $500, $1,000, $5,000, and even a $10,000 bill. These weren't meant for everyday shopping. They were primarily tools for banks and large financial transactions. The $1,000 bill itself most commonly featured the face of Grover Cleveland, the only US president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. Cleveland wasn't chosen for any particular connection to money. Like many banknote portraits, the choice reflected recognition and historical significance rather than symbolism. During the early 20th century, the $1,000 bill had a simple purpose. It made moving money easier. Imagine a bank transferring $1 million in cash. Using $10 bills would require 100,000 pieces of paper. With $1,000 bills, the same amount could fit neatly into a much smaller stack. For institutions dealing with large financial settlements, this efficiency mattered. But something important began to change in the financial world after the 1930s. Banks began adopting faster and more secure methods of transferring funds. The creation of centralized banking systems and electronic record-keeping made it possible to move enormous sums of money without physically moving cash at all. Instead of trucks carrying money between banks, transactions increasingly happened through ledgers and electronic communication. This change made large bills less necessary. At the same time, another problem began to emerge. High-denomination currency turned out to be extremely convenient for illegal activity. Think about it for a moment. If someone wants to move $1 million using $20 bills, they would need 50,000 notes. That amount of cash is heavy, bulky, and difficult to hide. But if that same amount were stored in $1,000 bills, it would require only 1,000 pieces of paper. The difference is enormous. Large bills make it dramatically easier to transport and conceal huge amounts of money. And that made them attractive not just to banks, but also to criminals involved in organized crime, tax evasion, and black market transactions. By the mid-20th century, governments were becoming increasingly aware of this issue. In 1969, the United States government made a major decision. The Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve announced that several high-denomination bills would be discontinued. This included the $500, $1,000, $5,000, and $10,000 notes. The reasoning was simple. These bills were no longer needed for legitimate banking purposes, and their existence made large criminal transactions easier. Stopping production wouldn't eliminate crime, of course. But removing extremely high-value currency made it harder to move large amounts of illicit money in cash. So the government stopped printing them. But here's an interesting detail. The $1,000 bill was never officially canceled. It remains legal tender in the United States. That means if you somehow found one today, it would still technically be worth $1,000 in spending power. Of course, no one would actually spend it. Over time, these bills became extremely rare. Many were returned to the Federal Reserve and destroyed as part of normal currency replacement. Others were kept by collectors. Today, surviving $1,000 bills are worth far more than their face value. Depending on the condition and the specific series, some can sell for several $1,000s at auctions. In other words, the bill that once represented large transactions now functions mostly as a historical artifact. The disappearance of the $1,000 bill reflects a broader shift in how money works. For most of human history, money had to exist physically. Coins, notes, precious metals, value was something you could hold in your hand. Large bills made sense in that world because they reduced the physical burden of transporting wealth. But modern finance operates differently. Today, trillions of dollars move through electronic systems every single day. Banks settle transactions using digital records. Businesses transfer funds across continents in seconds. Even everyday purchases increasingly happen through cards, phones, or online payments. In this environment, large physical bills are unnecessary. In fact, many governments now view them as liabilities rather than conveniences. High-value currency can enable tax evasion, corruption, and underground economies because it allows large sums to circulate outside the banking system. That's why several countries have taken similar steps. For example, the European Central Bank decided to stop issuing the 500 euro note, often nicknamed the Bin Laden bill, because authorities believed it was frequently used in criminal transactions while rarely seen by ordinary citizens. The pattern is clear. As financial systems become more digital and transparent, governments tend to reduce the role of extremely large banknotes. But the disappearance of the $1,000 bill also reveals something psychological about money. Large physical bills carry a certain mystique. Seeing a $1,000 note feels different from seeing numbers on a screen. It represents wealth in a tangible form. That tangible presence once made money feel powerful and real. Today, most wealth exists as data. When someone transfers money online, no paper moves. No coins change hands. Numbers shift between accounts in a database somewhere. The $1,000 bill belongs to a different era, when moving money meant physically moving paper. And that's why it slowly faded away. It didn't disappear overnight. It simply became unnecessary. Banks no longer needed it. Governments didn't want criminals using it. Digital systems replaced the logistical problems it once solved. So the bill quietly left circulation. What remains are a few surviving pieces of currency, sitting in collections, museums, and auction houses. They serve as reminders of a financial system that once relied on stacks of paper to move enormous sums of money. If you ever see a $1,000 bill in person, it will probably be behind glass, not because it's illegal, but because it belongs to a version of money that the modern world has mostly left behind. Money is one of those things we rarely stop to question. We use it every day. Tap a card, send a payment, check a balance on a screen, and it all feels normal. But once you start looking closer, you realize how quickly the idea of money keeps changing. The $1,000 bill feels strange today, but not long ago it was completely ordinary. And that makes you wonder what parts of today's financial world will seem just as strange in the future. Will physical cash disappear entirely? Will people one day look at paper money the same way we now look at $1,000 bills? If you enjoy exploring these kinds of questions and the strange stories behind everyday things, let me know in the comments what topic we should dig into next. There are a lot of forgotten pieces of history hiding in plain sight. And if you like content that looks at money, technology, and the systems we take for granted, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next video. Because sometimes the most interesting questions aren't about what exists today. They're about what quietly disappeared and what might be next.